Hi, this is Ayaka Mendez. I am the voice of Ryuko in Kill la Kill, Gon in Hunter x Hunter, Bernadetta in Fire Emblem Three Houses, Ayaka in Genshin Impact, and much, much more. And you are watching Points of Experience.
On today's episode, as you've just seen, heard, saw, were privy to, you were enlightened by, you had your curiosity sparked by, we have Ayaka Mendez on the podcast from titles like Fire Emblem Three Houses, My Hero Academia, Kill la Kill, Genshin Impact, Hunter x Hunter, some of Seven Deadly Sins. I mean, some of the titles which are my all-time favorites. And the fact that I get to sit and talk with these people is one of the most rewarding things I think about having been in this industry, is talking with people, as I think a lot of fans feel like when they get to meet some of their favorite voice actors. For me, I still have that same feeling. Talking with these people that care so much about what they do and they put their heart and soul into, and they're just extremely talented. Ayaka is kind of at the top of the list for me of people who check all those boxes off. And she's so sincere and humble and real. And I learn a lot in this episode from her. Like her sense of, as we've talked about many times on this podcast, but in very different ways, like not caring what other people think and trusting the process. And even her, like, understanding that she learned a lot by doing. And a lot of her early jobs and gigs and roles, she was still figuring herself out and having imposter syndrome and all of those things that you would imagine come with starting out in a career that, you know, you probably feel like, I don't belong here. There's people way more talented than me. And you get put in these scenarios where you're the lead character or one of the lead characters time after time after time. And all of her work is beloved. It's just, she is so talented, and I even having recorded this episode, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm like, how does she do it? I'm sure she doesn't even know, and I think a lot of it has to do with her personality and her demeanor. So just seeing how relaxed she is really was eye-opening for me. I come from a very different side of that pendulum, although I have very similar insecurities. So this was a very fun podcast, very interesting podcast for me to record, and a very refreshing perspective on things from someone who is as successful as she is. So stick around. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Ayaka, I'm so excited to be talking to you today for a number of reasons. I feel like I'm finally having a guest on here who I can nerd out about Final Fantasy 14 with.
Really? I didn't know you played.
Oh, I haven't been playing as much right now. I was leveling Dark Knight up, and I was trying to get to a point where I could finish the storyline, and I took a break. And gosh, truth be told, I was playing a lot of Final Fantasy 11 on a private server. That sounds really nerdy to say. Have you ever played 11?
I know about, I used to play 11 like around when it first came out.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I had terrible internet, so I couldn't keep playing, unfortunately. But I've been wanting to go back and play because it's still running.
Oh, yeah. I mean, retail is still going strong. There's still a great community there. I was, like, afraid at a point in time that they were going to shut down the servers, and, like, that would be it. But that was my first MMO. That was, like, what I was raised on in terms of my foundational MMO years.
Yeah,
oh, really? No kidding?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I don't think I've really touched another MMO other than the Final Fantasy ones. I played, like, the WoW trial, but it wasn't really my thing. So I kept with Final Fantasy.
So I'm really curious, what is it about 14 that you love so much? Like, is it the story? Is it the gameplay? Is it the characters? Is it the lore? Like, what is it about 14 for you that you enjoy?
Man, well, so kind of funny in a way. At first I was kind of just playing it like, you know, it's a game. It's a Final Fantasy game. I love Final Fantasy games. It's a community game. You can play with a lot of people, whether you know them or you don't know them. Mm-hmm. And I didn't super pay as much attention to the story early on. But during the pandemic, because I was on and off, I've been playing since A Realm Reborn beta, so a very long time, like 8 years.
Yeah,
and,
me too.
It's and when they would delete your account and you'd have to start all over. Yeah,
I've
been playing since then. But so I was just kind of playing. Like I had a bunch of people I played with, and then they all kind of fell off of it. So I was playing on and off for like years. Stopped around somewhere in Stormblood because I was playing with my sister for a little bit, but I didn't really read a lot of the story because she would kind of skip through it, and to keep up with her, I'd have to skip through it too. So I didn't catch a lot of that. So I'd be kind of like, oh, whatever, it's a fun game that I play every so often. But during the pandemic, I made friends with some people via Twitter through some connections that I knew played 14. So we started playing together, and I, got through Stormblood. And then once Shadowbringers hit, I think is when I was like, this isn't just a game anymore. Like, this is like, you feel like you're kind of living through the story at that point. Like, it's so immersive and just the stories. I mean, I don't know how far you've played through, but Shadowbringers is like incredible.
Yeah, I'm like fairly caught up with everything. I'm just I'm like a 76 Dark Knight. But I mean, I played everything prior to that, Storm's Blood and Heaven's Sword and that was So I played those pretty religiously when they were active, and I mean I had so much fun doing like the Garuda Prime EX at the time and Titan when those were like the big fights, and I went really really hard those, and I was even because I had played 1.0, and because as a huge Final Fantasy fan, I love I mean, the fact that there was an MMO with Chocobos, I was like, okay, this is what I'm talking about here. You know what I mean? That's what I got so interested with, and the way that they incorporated everything I love about storytelling, the combat, the mechanics, you feel really rewarded playing the game, and with a community, like you said, I had a bunch of people who I had played 11 with that went on to play 14, and you just feel it's like a different way of socializing, and that's what I get really attracted to. What is it about Final Fantasy that maybe stands out for you that you like as a franchise, or in terms of, why was that the MMO that you had only played games through? You said you love Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's just like the story and the characters. I'm not like a huge gamer. Like I game a lot, but I'm not like, I'm very casual.
Okay, that's fine. Hey!
So I just now actually started, as far as 14 goes, started going into like more extreme rating. So I've done like Unreal, what is it, Sephiroth Unreal. I did, which is really fun, and some like EX stuff, some current EX stuff. Not so much Savage is a little much for me right now, but I'll get to it eventually. But yeah, it's just the story and the game. Sometimes the gameplay is more fun than others depending on which one you're playing. Turn-based, I think, is kind of more my speed as far as gameplay goes. So the older games are kind of more my speed. But the characters, some of the characters are just so near and dear to my heart. I know this is controversial, but Final Fantasy VIII is probably my favorite because it's one of the first I played. And I know it's really like a hot or cold for people. It's either they really love it or they really hate it. So
I would say that for me, it's definitely not my favorite, but I enjoyed it so much. There's such fond memories. I mean, those were like very formative years for me when I was playing that game, because I came off of, I think the first Final Fantasy I ever played was 3, and then like I got really into it when I started playing 7. Like that was the first PlayStation title to have a Final Fantasy, and then like after playing that, I was like, what's next? And 8 with like you had these gun blades, and like it was just, and Zell was one of the first, like I might have been, gosh, I was in grade school. I dressed up as Zell for Halloween, and not a soul knew who I was. But I felt like the coolest kid in school. Like having my mom did the tattoo for me, and I spiked my hair up. Like I loved that game. It was so much fun.
That's so cool. Yeah. Just the way that you can connect to the characters. Like a lot of them feel so real. So I really love that about the franchise in general.
Yeah, I'm a huge, gosh, it's been year after year with those games. I feel like I can meter where I was socially too, depending upon which game had come out at the time.
For sure.
But enough about Final Fantasy real quick, because I know that's super fun for me to talk about, and I'll spend the whole conversation here doing it. For you, I have to say, a lot of what was formative for me in games was Final Fantasy, but a lot of what was anime formative for me were shows like Hunter x Hunter, Kill la Kill. These were shows that like I I had gotten really big into, I was big into anime as a kid, obviously Dragon Ball Z and things like that, but I don't think I really had an emotional intelligence yet until animes like Full Metal and Hunter x Hunter, and like where I could really wrap my head around, like I had to rewatch Death Note at the time. Like I was like, I liked Death Note as a kid, but I was like, I don't really know what's going on, you know, like I'm not really catching everything they're saying. So, you know, like when animes like Hunter x Hunter, and I mean, even Seven Deadly Sins has become a big favorite of mine. You were a part of so many of these animes, and I remember like a good friend of mine recommended me Kill la Kill, and I remember I watched the whole thing on a family vacation in the gym on the treadmill. Like, there's just so many titles that when I was going through your resume, I'm like, it was such a part of my life, and they're such prolific titles that are beloved by so many people that, I mean, gosh, my fiance Allie, she's a huge Seven Deadly Sins fan, and we call our cat Deanne. Funny enough, it's because she thinks she's bigger than what she really is, and she's got this is sweetheart. Anyway, you were a part of so many of these formative things for me. So do you have as a fan of these things? I'm assuming you were you a fan of anime when you were growing up, and was that something you were watching? Does it feel kind of surreal to be, maybe not for yourself, because if you're a part of it, maybe there's like a layer of you that's outside of it, but do you feel the surrealness of it being a part of like these iconic and prolific titles that influence people's entire lives or childhoods?
Yeah, for sure. I'd been watching anime since I was a teenager, and not many people like knew what it, I don't want to say didn't know what it was.
Sure.
Because everyone has their opinions on anime, whether they know what it is or not, of course. But it was like back when, you know, when Borders existed, and Barnes and Noble and places like that had like very small like sections of manga on the shelves, or like DVDs were like 4 episodes for $30, and you like tried to scrounge your money together to be able to purchase one at like a Best Buy or something like that. But I never even imagined like I'd be voice acting. Like it was something that was always kind of like or not always, but since I was pretty young, it was like a hobby of mine. I used to do it on the internet. And like, of course, there'd be like fan dubs and like radio plays and stuff like that. So I would do these things, and me just being a kid from Chicago was like, yeah, this would be cool to do. Like, it'd be really cool to be able to do it. But, you know, you have to move to California. I don't know if I'll ever be able to move because I'm a very independent person, or I very much was so when I was a kid. So, or not independent, dependent. I'm a very dependent person as a kid. That's what I meant to say.
That makes more sense. There you go.
Sorry, brain is moving faster than my mouth is.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I just wasn't expecting to ever move out here and be able to do any of that, because I didn't have a lot of like acting training, because I'm very shy, still very shy. I've gotten more over it as the years go by, as I like have more experiences. Conventions have really helped me kind of break out of my shell a lot, because you meet so many people,
I'd imagine.
And yeah, and speaking of kind of at conventions, like those are a lot of the moments too where it still feels so surreal to me, because I used to be that kid going to conventions. I would go to anime conventions, I would cosplay, I would go to panels, voice acting panels, and like hear what the people had to say. And yeah, now I'm on the other side, and it never has really become real to me. I feel like it's still very like, oh my god, am I dreaming? Like, is this real life? So yeah, it's crazy how much I've been fortunate to do, and like you said, like such iconic series, not only just like Hunter x Hunter, which has been around forever, and Kill la Kill, which kind of blew up when that came out, but like being a part of the new cast of like Sailor Moon is incredible for a show that's been around for 25 years now. I think they just had their anniversary, and it just, yeah, it's still really really hard to fathom that this is my life. So
I very similar in those ways. As a kid, I was terrified to do anything. I was very shy. I wound up finding humor being a way for me to break out of my shell, but I was that anime video game kid, and I kind of had to become like a social chameleon, and that's how I wound up surviving what was high school and middle school and things like that. What was it for you as a kid that you loved about anime, or how were you introduced to anime or video games? When did those become a part of your life to a point where you're like, this is a part of my identity or the thing that I'm finding comfort or hobby or solace in? When did that come about for you? At how old?
Well, gosh, I had actually been watching anime since before I knew what anime was. My dad used to watch Speed Racer and like Astro Boy and stuff like that. G-Force.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that's what anime was. And I think it wasn't, I didn't really solidify what it was until probably middle school. So I was probably, I don't know, like, how old are you in middle school? Like 12, 13,
12,
something
13,
like that.
Yeah.
I had known about stuff like Dragon Ball Z and like all the stuff that was on Cartoon Network, Sailor Moon. And I'd watch it here and there, but it wasn't until like there's this person in middle school where she was also very quiet and kind of reminded me in a way, and I was like, oh, maybe I can try to make more friends this way. And I knew she really liked anime, like I would see her drawing it all the time, so I started watching the stuff that I knew she was drawing to kind of like have more stuff to talk about. And that's kind of like, I think, where my at least knowledge of more anime kind of started expanding, because she used to watch like Ranma 1/2. I hadn't really given Dragon Ball a huge try until then, so I started watching that more. Yu Yu Hakusho, stuff like that. So, and then we did eventually become friends, and like our circle kind of got a little bit bigger of us little, quiet anime watching kids. So, but yeah, and I'm still in contact with her and a lot of the other people. And, yeah, we just kept watching stuff all throughout high school. And once the internet became a lot bigger, you've got things like Crunchyroll and all those websites where you could just stream everything, and I would watch more stuff on TV when that started showing more on TV once it got a little bit more popular, and just kind of eating up whatever I could find.
Yeah.
Really listening to other people's recommendations and all that. So that's
You said that you hadn't thought you'd ever become a voice actor or an actor, that was kind of like you were doing the fan dubs online, or you were part of those communities. When did you start pursuing either acting or voice acting, or start doing the fan dubs? How did that wind up being a shy, anime-loving kid? When did you start getting these ideas to be like, oh, I want to start now being a part of those, or I want to start doing the performative aspects? Because it seems very contradictory to most shy people to think like, hey, I am terrified of social interactions. Now I'm going to do the thing where I stand right in front of everybody and show my talent in front of everyone. How did that come about for you being that type of child?
Well, that was kind of the thing about at least doing voice acting as a hobby on the internet, is you could just be in your own house and just kind of like how we do it now almost.
True.
You just record in your own room, and you just upload it to the internet, and there it is for everybody to listen to. So the first thing I actually remember doing, there was this website called Voices of the Planet, and it was a Final Fantasy website where people would just like take lines from the game and just record themselves doing it as if they were being the character that said them, and they'd upload them for everybody to hear. And there was just like this archive of just people doing that for whatever characters they could. So I did that. And then I looked up more stuff about voice acting, because it's kind of like, the more you watch and like play games, watch shows and play games, like the more you kind of figure out that there are several people that do this job, and it is a pretty cool job. So I'd start looking up those people. I started looking up like anything about voice acting I could. I came across these forums where a bunch of other people were interested in voice acting and would hold auditions for like just these fun projects, no money's involved. And I'd audition for those and I'd book them. And that was a lot of my like early experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't very good. But so that was, that's kind of how it wasn't the formal way of like learning how to dub, but I did learn how to dub like just by visual sight of like where the characters are speaking and when they stop speaking, as opposed to like the ADR beeps that I'm more used to now. But so stuff like that. And then I like lost my train of thought, but
doing the fan dubs for Final Fantasy, and then that's like, is that where you found the confidence to like, because it's again like where did was there a thought where you said, I love these games and I want to, was it more about like it being I want to be a part of games, or more I want to perform because the performances I'm seeing in games are now inspiring me to voice act?
Yeah, I think it was more of the latter. I mean, kind of both, but I had kind of always wanted to act. Like, I thought that was a really cool way of, like, showing creativity. But because I was so shy, I would kind of, like, steer away from, like, trying to do things like that. So when I found voice acting, I was like, oh, this is the thing for me, because I can act, but I don't have to be, like, in front of a crowd of people, you know?
Yes.
But I did, like, because I knew that it would be helpful, did push myself to do more things. So, like, I auditioned for a few school plays. Didn't really get anything more than, like, you know, background, like, people and all that. But it was still, like, something that I was really proud of myself for doing, because I got up and auditioned in front of a bunch of people, because it was at, like, school where they'd have everybody that was also auditioning in the audience watching you. Very nerve-wracking. But yeah, I do stuff like that. One year in, like, what was it, 2009 or so, I had come out to California. I was still living in Chicago at the time. Come out to California to do that anime Expo Idol that they were doing, like, years ago.
Yes.
And that was also very nerve-wracking, because I'd never done anything specifically like that before, because there were, like, hundreds of people in the audience, because they had so many people auditioning for that. And I stumbled my way through a monologue that they made you memorize for some reason. So I'm not very good at memorizing. That's another reason why I don't do stage acting. But it's so much easier having a script in front of you for me anyway.
I agree.
But yeah, so I just, despite the shyness, like, I did try to push myself at the very least to, at my own speed, obviously. Like, I wasn't, like, full force, like, going out and doing anything. But every once in a while I'd be like, okay, like, I can do this. Let's see how well I handle it. And then I'd do it, and, you know, wouldn't always be great, but I could say that I did it, which I'm pretty proud of. So
that takes a lot of strength as a kid. Yeah. I can't say that I had, I mean, I didn't start doing this until I was in college, and I was still deathly terrified. I felt like I was going to get, you know, if I did something and people didn't like it, I felt like the shame of people, like, having that face of, like, what? Or laughing or any of that stuff. It would have killed me. Were your friends doing it, or did you, like, have encouragement from your parents? Like, where were you finding this strength as a kid? Or was it just you talking to yourself and saying, you like doing this, or you got to try it? Was it just you being your best friend coach, or was it people around you? Where were you finding that strength from?
I would say it was mostly me. Not that my parents are unsupportive, but I don't think they were like, you know,
you gotta do this.
Yeah, they weren't like, you know, my parents are just like, do whatever you want to do. Like, well, you know, we're proud of you, we're happy for you, and all that. But they were never like, go do acting. Like, it'll be good for you. You're really shy. Just get out there and do it. And I didn't really. I kind of talked to my friends about doing, you know, the online stuff back then, but. I don't know if they necessarily were ever, like, you know, pushing me to go do these things either. It was kind of like my own decision. And then if I told them about it, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's really cool. But yeah, it was more of my own thing, which always surprises me when I, like, actually push myself to do things, because I will kind of err on the side of, like, oh no, you know, I'll just be over here in the corner just watching everybody else do the thing, because that's really cool. Like, I'm happy for them, but I'm just gonna, you know, just do this over here.
Yeah. That's so cool. And I think there's a lot of people, especially, I mean, from people I meet who are aspiring, or they haven't even taken the first step, and they're interested in voice acting. A lot of times they're fans of anime or fans of video games, and they're very shy, and it's like, the thought of standing in front of people, like we were talking about just a second ago, is like, it's paralyzing. They can't even utter a word out. And that's kind of like what my first experience was like for myself. The first time I ever had performed in front of people was like, I auditioned for a musical that I was totally not qualified to be auditioning for. I've talked about this before, but I didn't even know by the end of that audition if I actually sang the song I prepared to go and do. I was that paralyzed by fear. But the second I had done that, and I, like, broke through that threshold, I was like, I got through it, and I lived. So was it just like a series of constantly doing things for you, where you were like, okay, I auditioned for this, and you just, like, kept getting better and better and better, and finding the confidence to eventually, like, be like, yeah, that was a good performance, that was a good shot, to where people were recognizing that?
I wouldn't say like on stage I did that, because I would only do it like every so often. It wasn't like too much. But as far as like voiceover goes, like,
Sure.
yeah, like I was definitely terrified the first at least year or two that I was doing it. And it was still the kind of like the aspect of while you are kind of like on your own in a little box when you're doing voiceover, there are still people kind of watching you, you know. There could be like just the director and the engineer. There could be, you know, another client or two. There could be 10 clients in the room. Like, you don't know until you get in there and you just have all these eyes on you. And sometimes you look over in the booth if you can see them and you're just like, oh my God, like there are people there. But in reality, like you just kind of have to, I had to definitely get over the fact that, you know, a lot of times they're not really watching you. They're just listening to you and they want you to do well. That's why they hired you. So once I kind of get over that, and I actually had somebody, I think this was kind of the moment where I was like, you know what? I don't need to be nervous for these things anymore. Because I would get nervous like anytime I worked with a new director. That would scare me because I'd been working with a lot of the same directors over and over again. I'd get comfortable with them. But once it was a new director, that would all like go away because I'm like, oh, what if they hate me? Like, you know, this, and that, and like getting in my head about everything. But I had somebody tell me, a close friend who runs a studio, and she told me, you know, just kind of let go of it. You know, everybody wants you to do good. You're doing fine. Like, you don't need to worry about it so much. Because I would, you know, when I'd audition in person, I'd get really nervous. And I'd want to do take after take after take. But she'd be like, your first one was fine. Like, your instincts are good. Like, and you kind of realize at a certain point, too, like, the more you do it, the less natural it gets.
Yeah.
So.
still true.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the first take isn't always going to be the winner. But.
Sure.
I think a lot of people are harder on their first take on themselves for it because it's just usually not what you expect to do, but sometimes that's, you know, the thing that people are looking for. So you kind of have to like step outside and like not automatically assume that everything you do is awful, which is a lot of what I would do. Yeah. So once I kind of like got over that hurdle, and I don't want to, I'm going to say I kind of stopped caring, but it's not like I completely stopped caring. You know, It's just like, it's more of like stopped caring what like others thought of you in the sense of like you being nervous about it. Like, I don't know if I'm explaining this properly.
Yeah.
But
I think
it's yeah.
I think that a lot of people, like you're saying, is we get nervous and we think like, oh, they're going to think this, or I'm not good, or that was stupid.
Yeah.
Like, you wind up making your value based upon these opinions of people thinking like, oh, they're laughing about me, and they like, I took a chance and I took a risk, and they're like, what the heck are you thinking? And the second you can let go of that, more than likely those people behind the glass are like, no, what are we getting for lunch? Or
exactly. I've definitely heard stuff like that before too, where it's like they're not actually like whispering bad things about you. They're just like, what are we doing for lunch?
Yeah.
Like, I want this, I want that, you know. So, but yeah, you explained it way better than I did.
No, hey, listen,
you know,
that's happened to me, and it's happened to so many colleagues before, and I think it's super important for people to realize and we don't actually say it enough on here, is that if you can just allow yourself to remove that, like, obviously the people are behind the glass, but removing that aspect of what you're doing from the equation opens up a world of possibilities, because then it's your box to play in. It's not your box that's adjacent to a box where people are judging you. It's like, no, this is the sandbox to play in. And I loved when, not that I am ever over this, and not that we get to go into studios that much and audition anymore, but the second I realized that, for me, was very eye-opening. Did you have a first, like, job or experience or moment where you kind of recognize like, oh, I can let that go? Was that something you can recall when that kind of clicked for you and you were able to like let yourself go a little bit or not be so hard on yourself?
I can't recall specific job, but there are definitely things that I look back on where I know I was really hard on myself. And I can hear the growth in the performance. Like Kill la Kill is actually one of those for me. Because I was very new. Like I think I had been doing it for like about 6 months by the time I had booked Kill la Kill. But I was so scared of that job because it was such a huge thing. Yeah. I had done like leads before, but nothing like super duper mainstream if you don't count, I guess, Magi the Labyrinth of Magic, which was a good show. I loved that show.
I loved it as well.
Near and dear to my heart, but definitely not on the realm of like popularity, the same realm of popularity as Kill la Kill,
Sure.
I would say. But so it was just such a big thing. Like I knew Aniplex, the company that did it, was like expecting it to be huge. Came out the same time as Attack on Titan, which is also huge. So I think they maybe like were butting heads a little bit as far as like popularity goes. But I just having all that pressure on me being still the new kid and doing this like really cool badass role for this really big thing was like so much. And I, again, being a quiet kid, did not think I could scream like that. But somehow I managed to like do it. And I think my voice strength and just my confidence only got like bigger and better over the course of that show. So when I listen back to it, I can hear how new I was in the first, like, I don't know, maybe half of it, fourth of it or whatever.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, like I hear my confidence having grown throughout the course of it. So stuff like that, I think, is really cool.
Which kind of works for the show, though, because you wind up seeing this character come into some pretty cool power and standing up for herself amongst this school of people who are, I don't want to say out to get her, but like it's, there's adversity in her way. So
yeah,
I wonder for you, what was it about that character in Kill la Kill that you were able to, as a shy kid, and especially if you're saying that wasn't typically in your nature to be so fiery or brash, where did you find that strength within your instrument if it's not something you were used to doing? Or were you the person that you were in your room just going, ah, like, was it like literally on the job saying like, am I going to do this right now? Or where did you like, what kind of preparation did you do to allow yourself to have the freedom to, because it is, I mean, you might be critiquing yourself and hard on your performance, but it's phenomenal throughout, and it's well received for a reason, the dub especially.
Thanks. I kind of learned it on the job, really, but I think a lot of it was just like very cathartic for me. So if I was ever really nervous on a day I was recording, I would kind of like just try to let go as much as I could. And I still at that time was holding myself back a lot. So if I'd known the things I know now, could it have been, I think, even better? Probably. But, having been the person that I was at that time, it was just like super cathartic for me because like if I was ever having a bad day or like especially nervous, I could like scream my heart out. So that was kind of nice. Or like when, Ryuko does have her vulnerable moments, like those are nice to kind of like get out depending on how I was feeling that day or that week or, so I think that's kind of where I found all of that strength and like ability to perform that character. It was just kind of like working off my experiences while recording it as well. So
that's kind of amazing. And if for anyone here who hasn't acted before or done voice acting, it truly can be this therapeutic, cathartic, releasing experience unlike anything. I mean, I've had sessions of therapy where I'm like, my acting class, I got through way more of my demons out there than I did ever sitting here talking with this person. Obviously, this is very helpful, but something about being, at least this is for me, and I'm curious about your experience, being able to like put on the clothes of somebody else and that giving you the freedom to say, like, in my life, I can relate to what this character might be experiences, and there's no rule to say I can't feel the way I feel right now. Like if I want to feel angry like this character's feeling right now, I can. And like that physical release, it just does. It's like it's something about releasing things physically through your voice, through your body, through your emotion, which we oftentimes bottle up as people. You get the freedom to do it through performance. Was that kind of your experience with maybe doing that character or doing characters at that time in your life?
Yeah. I mean, even now, like I actually just had a session today where I had a very, very sad moment in the show, and I cried along with it because I actually hadn't watched it. It's a show that's already releasing. We actually just announced it. It's called A Place Further Than the Universe.
Heck yeah. Congrats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And so we were recording an episode of that show that was super sad, and I haven't been keeping up with it just because I've been busy and haven't had time to watch the episodes, but I had no idea what was coming. So when it happened, it like hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was supposed to be crying for the performance, and I definitely was crying. Like those are real tears. So and I've had that with several shows. Like I love slice of life anime, so getting to work on that kind of stuff is not only just like a joy for me, but it's also, again, like therapy for me. Because even if I haven't gone through those characters' experiences exactly, I can usually find something in my life that kind of reminds me of it, or just feeling the empathy for the character, I think is really what pulls me through it, and is able to make me most of the time cry along with them for the performance. So, but yeah, I definitely do have those moments for sure. For Kill la Kill, it was like getting to release all that like energy and anger was really nice, because I don't do that a lot in my personal life. I try not to anyway. And I would just be exhausted after that show. Like that show, I'd have to take a nap after every session.
Yeah.
It was just so much.
We were just talking with Crispin Freeman last episode, and he talks about that, like you have to, not that you have to, but a lot of times these performances require you to be leaving these booths drenched in sweat. A lot of people get the perception like, oh, voice acting, I'm sitting in a chair and I'm talking and I'm reciting lines. It's like, it can be a full body experience. And I've left those 4-hour sessions sometimes and I'm like, did somebody just hit me with a bag of bricks? I thought I was just like voice acting. And it's like, because you're putting so much of your physicality and your emotion behind it. It's like, if you've ever had a good cry in real life and the exhaustion you feel like that, imagine that sometimes, like take after take after take. It can really wear on you. I want to take a step back real quick too, now that we've kind of jumped forward. I love hearing these people's stories about stories like yours of so many people come from different backgrounds and they find themselves into voice acting, whether it's by accident, through their own pursuit, through their love for anime games. You said you had loved all these things as a kid. You're doing these fan dubs. Where did you decide, I want to pursue this professionally? And then what was that first step to you making that decision? Was it moving? Was it visiting California and doing that contest? What was the impetus to say, I am going to now pursue this as a career?
So my actual background, since I didn't really do acting, but I do love like being creative. I actually have a bachelor's in arts in animation.
There you go.
And I did nothing with it when I moved out here, but I was proud of myself for going to school. That's what my parents wanted. It was great. But that was a lot of my driving force to actually moving to California. The voice acting thing was kind of something I had like, after that contest, actually, I think I was like, because I didn't win it. I didn't even place anywhere, which was fine. There was like hundreds of people. I wasn't expecting anything. I knew I was really nervous, so I didn't do my best. But I was, again, proud that I did it. So after I'd done it, I was like, okay, well, maybe, this isn't a thing. I'll just keep doing it online. It's fine, whatever. And then, so I have been dating another voice actor, Lucian Dodge, for over 10 years now, maybe 12. I don't remember anymore. But he had been doing voiceover since I had met him. So he had been doing it in New York, and he wanted to move to California because that's where a lot of the work that he wants to do is, or he wanted to do is like animation and gaming and stuff like that, because New York is like more commercials.
That's where I grew up in New York, so I know all about it.
Yeah. So he wanted to move out here, and once I was ready to also move, I was like, okay, well, I've got this bachelor's in arts and animation, so California is probably the place I should be, because, Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, Nickelodeon, everything's out there.
Makes sense.
So I moved too, shortly after he did. We found a place, and I was kind of content to just like watch him do his thing. Slightly jealous, was watching him do his thing as he came out here. But I ended up, just for the heck of it, I was like, you know what? There are classes out here that people offer for voiceover. Why not? What could it hurt? Just do like a workout at Bang Zoom, and it'll be fun. Like, going with friends and meeting new people, and it's fine.
Heck
sure.
Yeah.
No matter what happens with it. And I met Tony Oliver for the first time through those classes.
The amazing Tony Oliver, yes.
He's so great, yeah. And he just was like, wow, okay, you know what you're doing, which is really cool. And he decided to recommend me for auditions at Bang Zoom. And I didn't really get too much of the start of it, but they did end up like calling me in for like Walla here and there, which was a fun experience. I don't like Walla, but it was a fun experience at the time. I was very excited. And then I forget how exactly. Maybe it was like through a recommendation, but they had found out that I did boy voices, and they apparently needed that, or like new boy voices at the time. So I got sent an audition for this this old Treasure Island anime that got compiled into a movie, and I auditioned for it, and they're like, "We love it. We want to cast you." And I was like, okay, sure.
Are you sure? Yeah.
I guess. This sounds fun. And then I get in there and they're like, "Can you do a British accent?" Because I didn't do it for my audition. And I was like, not really, because I didn't want to lie to them and like have it be terrible. But then they're like, "We'll teach you." And I'm like, okay. So no, I wouldn't go look for that. It's not very good. I'm sure it's still on the internet somewhere.
We
but
will
it's a
find
very
it.
bad British accent. Someone did, actually. I mentioned it
Oh
once,
my
and someone
gosh.
actually went and found it. But I don't actually care if people watch it, but it is pretty bad. Like my performance is pretty bad, because I was just one of my very first things. And then after that, they just kind of like kept using me as boy voices. I think I may have booked the Pac-Man game before the Treasure Island thing, but they kind of happened simultaneously.
Okay.
So, because I think that's what it was. It was a voice match that they had asked for. And then that's when they were like, "Oh, boy voices. I see." So I was doing that, and then I did boy voices for them for the longest time before I finally got cast as like a female. And yeah, it just kind of like kept rolling from there. And I was working with Bang Zoom for a very long time, and then would get recommended for other studios and stuff through connections that I had made with directors and stuff. And at a point, I was just kind of like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe I can do this, I guess."
10 years later. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. It's, still, it's like, I do feel like I got really lucky and was at the right place at the right time kind of thing. So who knows, like, if I had started now, like, what would happen, you know?
Sure.
It's kind of a weird thing, but yeah, it's still very surreal.
Yeah. I mean, it's where did you find that because you said you took the class with Tony Oliver, did you start doing the boy voices there, and that's how he knew, like, oh, that was the character you tried out in the class or something? Or had you been working on those prior and refining those through the online dubs? Like, how was that such a readily accessible thing in your arsenal for when you took that class, or however you got recommended?
Yeah, that was a thing that I mainly focused on when I was doing fan dubs and stuff like that online. So I had prior experience with it, because that's a lot of, when I was watching anime more frequently and playing games and stuff, boy voices were the thing that I was very interested in. So watching Dragon Ball Z, like, you've got Laura Bailey as Trunks,
Sure,
and like Kara Edwards as Goten, and those were like so cool to me. Like, those performances are so good. And then, like, again, Laura Bailey is like Shin-chan in that show, and just all the various boys you could think of in shows and games from the 90s and 200s, or 2000s. Sorry. 200. I'm not that old, I promise. But yeah, I would just like mimic them. Oh, Brianne Sadal was a good one for me too, because I would just completely mimic her performance in like .hack sign.
Sure.
Tsukasa and .hack sign, and who is it? Jim Hawkins in Outlaw Star, which is a character named after the Treasure Island character, funnily enough.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I just would mimic, and I just loved doing that stuff. So that's kind of what I think I was known for in the online community as well. So doing that, like, for an actual person in the industry, I think they were surprised, because it's not a skill that like is easy to come by. I think for a lot of women or non-binary people. So it's a skill you definitely have to to work on, because, you know, a lot of women I know just kind of like rely on their natural voice to kind of do it, but they don't. You kind of need to add that grit to it to make it, at least for anime. I think for pre-life stuff, it's maybe a little more negligible, or they'll cast actual kids, which I think is really cool too.
Yeah.
But for anime, you kind of have to add that grit to it, or else people don't really believe it as a boy voice quite as much. So I had like control over that, and I think that was different for people at the time, because they didn't have too many people that could do that, I think.
Yeah. Would you say that you were obsessed with like this world that you were in? Because you seem, I mean, getting to know you here, you seem very like humbled about it, and I'm wondering, like, for me, because I was such a I'm the type of person, maybe it's my astrological sign as an Aries, I gotta like ram my head through everything I do, and it's like if I'm not naturally good at this, I'm just gonna bang my head against it until I figure it out. But I feel like, you know, for many people and many things, like when you relax and you just kind of trust the process sometimes, and you don't try and like put so much restraint in it, it becomes a little bit like easier. You get to the result faster. Were you kind of obsessing, beating your head like I was, or was it just like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna figure it out, and I'm gonna get it? Like, did you seem more relaxed in what you were trying to find, especially in the boy voices?
It was definitely more relaxing when I was just doing it for fun. Doing it professionally is a completely different story.
Okay.
Because you're like, well, people are paying me, I have to make sure it's good. But there are definitely times, like not only with boy voices, where, you know, I usually get told like I have pretty good instincts. But there are definitely times when, like, I think for everybody, even if you're like super grade A, I don't know, star actor who's been doing this for a million years, like sometimes things just don't click. And that happens for me. And that's when I tend to get frustrated and will beat my head against, you know, whatever I can find. Not actually, but
yeah,
you know
figuratively.
I mean.
Do not beat your head against
figuratively, things. Not actually against a wall or anything, I promise. But yeah, so I'll get really frustrated, and like I think it can be visible a lot of the time. So I think when people sense it, they're just kind of like, okay, well, you know, let me explain it a different way. Or like I'll start asking questions to like help myself understand it, because I want to get it, you know, like I don't want to have somebody be like, that's good enough, and then move on. Because some people will say that, and that like kills me inside every time. Like, and maybe they don't mean it that way, but it feels like they mean it that way to me.
Yeah.
And I just want it to be good. Like, I just want to work on good things and have my work be something I can be proud of.
That's a really great way to be, and I think that's what elevates especially the anime dub community and a lot of games right now, because there's a difference between when this was all starting out and anime was just being made by companies and was like, all right, you know how to use your voice, you're going to record this. The janitor, you come in and do this. We're finding a group of, like our contemporaries, people who love and care about what they do. Not necessarily they're obsessive fans of the mediums, but they care about the art and they care about the story. And I think that's why you're seeing such good dubs right now. You're seeing such good animation and cartoons, because people really care. I truly believe there's food at the table for everybody to eat, and I truly believe that if you're talented, you can make a name for yourself doing this. But it is so competitive, because it's like every time I look to my left and my right of the people who are casting things, I'm like, I'm casting this with that person? It's like these people are working so hard, and you have to put your heart and soul into it. And have you noticed a change from when you started to now? Has it been a more relaxing pursuit in terms of competing in this? I don't want to say competing at this point in time in voice acting as a career. Has it been more of a relaxing pursuit, or are you finding like you need to figure out more ways to push yourself and to stand out amongst the crowd? Like, what is it like for you today versus when maybe you didn't know as much as you did back then, and it was just kind of like blind instinct?
Man, not something I've super thought about, I guess, but I guess if I had to say anything, I don't know if it's super changed for me personally, because I'm just, you know, I'm happy to be cast in anything. Like, I just like working, but I'm also not the person who does the whole like networking grind, you know. That's never really been my thing.
Sure.
I just want, you know, people to like me for who I am and what I can bring to the table. And if I have to like, I don't know, this feels weird to say, but like if I have to like super push myself to prove myself outside of just acting, that's not really something I'm interested in. So if I can just audition and like show people that way, and like if I have like super creative ideas outside of like what they ask for, then I'll do it. But you know, most of the time I'll just kind of stick to the specs, because that could be what they're looking for. That could not be what they're looking for, depending on what they say in the emails or whatever. But yeah, I just this is probably bad and not like something I think I'd recommend for everybody. But I definitely just fly by the seat of my pants a lot of the time, just kind of coast it. But if there's something that I'm like, you know, really jonesing for, then I think I'll do more effort than I need to put into, maybe, which kind of makes things a little not stale, but like, I don't know. I just try too hard and I start thinking about it way too much.
Sure.
And then, but I don't like to do that is the thing, but I find myself doing it every so often because I'm like, I really want the thing.
Yeah.
And then those are the things you don't book because that's just how the universe works.
It seems like you've had this natural inclination to kind of trust yourself in the process. And I've found in my life, and it's one of the most difficult things for me. Like you said, you want something really bad. You start overworking, and you become the enemy between you and what you could have done if you had just trusted that you're good enough. You have the talent, the skill to give your unique take on it. Whether they like it or not is not up to you to decide. No. Unless you happen to be casting it, then I guess it's a little bit of nepotism. But you know, that remains to be talked about at this point in time. Can you identify what was it like something about your temperament as a kid? Was it just like how do you have such comfortability in yourself? Do you just like, I don't mean this as like, I mean this as a compliment, so take it as one. Like when you hear yourself in performances, do you have like, can you say, yeah, that was good, I liked what I heard? Like, do you have that kind of read with yourself? Or are you just very honest about how you feel, like if you've done a good job or not? Where do you find this? Yeah, I feel like that's the golden, the ticket that people are always looking for. It's like, how can I just relax? How can I just trust myself? Can you identify how you've found that in when you're able to do that in your auditions?
Oh man, I feel like I was actually talking something sort of like this with a director today that I was working with, where I was like, you know, I just kind of like I'll pick and choose where I'm like, I really want to fight for like this specific read to where I'm proud of it. But at a certain point, for certain projects, you kind of have to pick your battles, I think. So if something's fine, I don't want to like overwork it, because then I just kind of like make myself crazy. Yeah. You know, so sometimes I do settle for fine just because I know that that's, at least for anime projects and like sometimes video game projects, depending on the deadline, I know people have to just get through it, you know. With prelay stuff, bigger video game stuff, usually they'll take more time, and you can finesse things a little bit more. But for anime and like video games these days, you do like 2 takes, maybe 3 if you're lucky. Sometimes 1 take, and then it's fine, and you work on it, or you keep going. But I think having come from that background and like how working on anime and games, localization games has changed throughout the years, I've just kind of learned to like be okay with a performance, even if I don't think it's like necessarily up to my par, because it's kind of like a, what is it, subjective objective thing, and you kind of have to like think about it, about how other people are gonna view it, not yourself, because some other people may think like that was the most brilliant thing you've ever done, and you could still be like, what are you talking about, like that was garbage. So I just, and because I have such bad imposter syndrome some days, I just kind of have to like let it go, otherwise it'll just drive me nuts. So
That's so interesting you say you have imposter syndrome, because it's like it seems like you trust yourself so much, and yet there's the times where you just can't help but have imposter syndrome. And from someone on the outside, when I hear like your performances and someone on the outside can easily say this, Erica, you book so much, you're working all the time. Like, you have to like be in your head, like, I'm a freaking rock star, I'm kicking butt. And then to know like that feeling of imposter syndrome still lingers for you sometimes. It's a fascinating thing to, maybe it's just something us all as artists are plagued with. Maybe that's like
I think so.
The fuel that keeps
people,
us going, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of want to keep getting better in your own way. Like some people, like I said, I'm a little bit more casual about it, but I think some people use that as like, the ship that sails them into just pushing so hard to where that they feel like they can be confident and proud of themselves. But if I went that hard, I think I would I'd lose myself a little bit, I think. And I don't want that, I guess.
I think that's the healthier approach, if I had to say. I'm not a doctor. I can't say that for sure, but it seems like the healthier way of doing it. Where do you find, as an actor, as an artist, where do you find either inspiration for yourself as a creative, or find inspiration for what you bring to your characters? Is there a practice or something you do in your daily life, whether it's people watching or playing the games? Where are you finding inspiration, both personally and professionally?
I mean, playing video games, I don't watch as much anymore, but every once in a while, like I'll watch something, whether it be anime or like an actual show, live action show.
Yeah.
And I'll just kind of like listen to people or watch people and see what they're doing with their performances. And I'll like, I don't know, if it's something interesting or just something like so weird, I'll mimic it a lot of the time. And I'm not like an impressionist or anything, but it's just kind of fun to like see if you can do a read the same way somebody else does. And sometimes I'll like recall that stuff and see if I can potentially add it to some kind of character that I'm working on or something like that. But I think actually Final Fantasy XIV, bringing that back, has been like a huge influence, because I think a lot of the performers that record that, they're all in the UK, and they're incredible, like
phenomenal.
It's so good, and just such like masterclass in performances from a lot of those people. And they inspire me a lot, I think, these days, which is really cool. And just in general, like non-acting wise, like music, I think is really helpful. Music is a good inspiration. So I was listening to a lot of mostly video game music these days.
me too. Yeah,
it's really good. It's so good. But yeah, stuff like that I think really pushes me.
What about when you get a job or you get an audition, whatever it is, something you're doing before you get into the booth at whatever point? Do you have any sort of rituals or regimens, things that you do that you can identify that you're either you need to do for yourself and your instrument, or you need to just do in preparation for the character and the material? Do you have to have a specific warm-up? Do you need to, print out the sides and write on them? Is there anything that you have to do specifically to get you ready for whenever you're going to record?
I'm the worst about doing warm-ups. I really should do warm-ups, but I don't. And they probably help me, but I just still don't do them. But I don't write on my scripts usually. I don't print them out and write on them. But I have found that at least doing work during the pandemic, people have been sending us the scripts a lot more often. And I'll usually like go through and like highlight my lines. Sometimes read through them. Sometimes I'll go watch episodes. I don't do as much of that anymore. If it's something I can watch, but because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
But having the scripts beforehand is really nice, and I will look through those. But kind of like the music thing too, using that as inspiration. I used to do that a lot more than I do now. But like for Kill la Kill and like a few of the other shows I'd worked on years ago, I would find a song that kind of resonated with the character for me from the soundtrack of the show, and just like blast that on the way.
Yeah.
The way to the session.
I did that when I did Neo. I was listening to because it was a sequel to the game that the The World Ends With You, and then we did Neo.
Yeah.
I would just listen to like all the original soundtrack of the first game. So I was like, I want to. Yeah, first of all, the music is great. So I was like,
good.
I want to get into that mindset, and then I would listen to like even Kingdom Hearts stuff because it's adjacent. I'm like, I want to be in this zone for what. So when I enter, it's kind of like how you see athletes getting themselves in the zone with their headphones on before a football game or something. They're, they have to get into whatever that world is. And I think that's really helpful as an actor, especially if like when I started out in New York, you're leaving like this crazy city and then you walk into a really what's supposed to be a creative place when, you just saw like two people fighting on the sidewalk or you're in LA traffic and you got people like cutting each other off and road rage. Like music has always been a thing for me that's grounded that arena that I'm about to enter into, and I think that can be very helpful for people who are starting out, or maybe they're living at their parents' house, or whatever it is that you need to create that realness for you to make it real.
Yeah.
What about performances that you've seen or shows or things? Is there anything that you saw where you're like, holy crap? I mean, obviously, other than Final Fantasy XIV, where you're like, I'm so impressed by that, and that's like. We have things like the Game Awards coming up, people getting nominated for all these really cool things. Is there something that like has stood out to you in this past decade where you're like, that performance really moved me in a way as like, it's like, I want to aspire to do that?
Yeah. Me and my boyfriend watched Queen's Gambit, which I think was really good. The performances of that were really good. Very like subtle, nuanced things. So very, very good piece to watch, I think, if you're into acting.
Yeah.
What else? What else have I played? Gosh, it's mostly been 14. I'm going to be real. I know I've played other things. What have I played? This is cheating because this is a game I'm in as well. But
that's
13
not cheating.
Sentinels. 13 Sentinels HxH Room is like so good.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know if you've played it, but
I've seen the trailer. I haven't played it though. No.
For anyone who hasn't played it, it's like it's a game, but it's mostly a visual, like an interactive visual novel.
Yeah.
That has like mech battles in it, so you get a lot of story within that, and everyone who's in it is just so good, like so good for their characters, and it's nice because it's like an anime styled game, but it's a little more grounded as far as the performances go. So meanwhile, you see other games like the typical like what you would consider anime JRPGs, and it's like everyone's like crazy. There's like little creatures and like all these like things, and everyone's just hyped up on Red Bull, and those are the types of games you think of.
Yeah.
But like when you see 13 Sentinels, it's like just the atmosphere is just so like somber and just cool, and there's just so much going on, and the characters all have their own personalities, and you can hear the personalities within each of the performances. That one's just probably, I think, one of my favorite game performances more recently, I think. Yeah.
What about, is there a title or a type of character or a franchise of something that you would love to like be a part of, or it's a character type that you've never done, or a part of yourself that you'd love to flex that you haven't really gotten to do? Like for me, I would love to play like a Joker style character, like just really allow myself to have that. I mean, I've done things in auditions before, obviously, but like that maniacal, like something about that like trigger for me. It's like I want to explore that on a very recurring level. I don't know what that says about me as a person, but there's something about it that seems really fun. And obviously, like Mark Hamill's Joker, I'm just like, this one of the creme de la creme of performances. Is there something like that for you, or a performance, or sorry, a style, like a character type or a franchise that you'd love to be a part of?
I don't know if I could pick a specific character type, because I feel like I've gotten at least a little taste of like almost anything I feel like I'd be good at or that I'd want to do at this point. I actually recently got to do something I'd never really done before in Cookie Run Kingdom.
Yeah.
It's my second time playing a character, and I got to play Black Pearl Cookie, and she is a character I got to explore a little bit more of, like things I didn't realize I could do with. So I did like kind of a Harley Quinn Azula from Avatar thing.
Sure.
Where she has this like crazy laugh, and I don't play a lot of evil characters, so that was kind of fun to tap into. So maybe something more like that I think would be fun to do more of that. But otherwise, like I, of course, love to be a named character in a Final Fantasy game, or Kingdom Hearts. I love Kingdom Hearts as well. Persona would be cool. But I did get to do incidentals for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which was pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah.
But being a named character in just any Final Fantasy game would be dream come true, I think, for me.
Fingers crossed, because there's 2 more titles, right, in the remake, and then there's...
I'm sure they won't stop making games.
I have a feeling that they're going to... I mean, we just got the Crisis Core remaster. Yep. They're doing another version of Final Fantasy VII. There's 2 more. I mean, gosh, they could just make... Yeah. They could make their own separate Final Fantasy universe out of Final Fantasy VII.
They could.
Honestly, is that cool? Have you ever had an experience, whether it be with a castmate or a director, somebody in the room, an engineer, where it had like kind of a revolutionary effect on you, or they said something to you, or it was a note about your performance, or something about being in the room with somebody else? I mean, for me, I just... top of my head, I think of like Bob Buchholz. One of the first things he told me, he was like, you can like repeat while we're hearing the playback what you hear in the Japanese reference. Like, you don't have to wait for us to play both of those. And I was like, oh, no kidding. So I can listen to it once for reference, and then I can hear the cadence, and I can do it at the same time. And then the third time, I've already gotten like a warm-up, like a pre-warm-up before we do the 3 in a row. So like that was like, to me, it was like light bulb moment. I'm like, oh, thank you, Bob Buchholz. Thank you very much. Have you had any of those experiences, whether big or small, or just something you took out of a session where you're like, oh, wow, I never thought of that?
I can't. I have such a bad memory, so it's like really hard for me to recall any specific like things I've been told. But I did find, obviously, this is something that I would do way more before the pandemic, when we could actually go into studio with multiple people. But after sessions I would have for like anime and sometimes video games, if I knew the people, I'd be like, hey, can I sit in on the session? And so I'd watch other people perform, and I think that was really eye-opening for me. Kind of also going back to things where we were talking about how like I kind of, learned to let go of things, I guess.
Yeah.
Once I started watching people and seeing that they messed up the same way I did, that was like, I thought that was only a me thing. Like, I thought that was me being like the newer performer, or like the very unconfident performer. But I was like, no, everybody messes up. And sometimes they do, the exact same things I do. And like they stumble over words, and like they read things wrong, or they forget words in a sentence, or they read the wrong line, and just stuff like that. So once I saw that, I think that was part of what kind of opened me up into just being like, oh, okay, so I don't have to worry about this as much, because everybody does it. Yeah. It's not just me. So
I'm going to say this, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this. I was sending in an audition once to my agent, and they sent me the wrong Dropbox link, and when I clicked on it, it had like everybody else's auditions in there. And a piece of me was like, I'm curious. I need to know. Like, I'm like, well, I want to hear what other people did. It's just, I had already sent mine in at the time.
Yeah.
And so I listened to like 2, and it like gave me such a sense of resolve. I'm not going to say who I listened to or anything, but it was like, people, I'm like, I just, listen, my curiosity was killing me, and I had to do it, whether that's however anybody feels about that. Listen, I did it. I was curious, and it gave me such a sense of ease to know, like, what I'm doing is not anything like what they're doing, but it doesn't make it worse, Like, it didn't, like I remember I was like, okay, I'm so fine that I'm just doing this the way that I want to do it, and if that's not what's right for this project, fine, but I know what I'm doing is, like, it's true to who I am and the way that I interpret the character, and other people are doing things that I would never think to do. And that's what makes this like industry and job so cool, is that you can give 100 people the same sides. You can give 100 people the same character, and like 99% of the time it's going to come out very different, with people who are professionals and they know what they're doing and they trust their instrument. It was, again, maybe ethically I shouldn't have done that, but I was curious. I had to do it. It was.
I think probably somebody, like at least everybody's done something like that at some point. So definitely wouldn't think you're a bad person for it at all.
What's done is done. Well, as
That's
a director, as a casting director, I mean, you get to experience those things, and you've got to dabble in doing a bit of that, correct, in your life. Where did that come about?
A little bit.
Yeah, like was that just something that fell into your lap, where like someone was like, you would be really good at this? How did you wind up getting into those? Because I think that's how I first worked with you.
Yeah, it was. It's funny. My first directing job was with Bang Zoom. And I, was going into the studio so often at a certain point that everybody just knew me and everybody was comfortable with me. And I'm pretty good friends with one of the production coordinators over there who's now a casting person, I think. But at the time she was just a production coordinator or assistant or something. I don't know what her exact title was. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so I was talking to her about this movie that I knew was coming out, and they had asked me to write it because I also do adaptation and stuff. So I was adapting it, and she was like basically telling me that they didn't have a director for it yet. And I was kind of like, well, what if I directed it, since I already know all about it, since I wrote it and everything? And she's like, do you actually want to? And I'm like, I mean, I guess if there's nobody else, I could try it. And they're like, okay. And I knew the client that was working on it too, and really liked her, and had worked at a bunch of her projects, so she was totally okay with it, and everybody was really supportive there about me doing it. Engineers, all the people in the office, a lot of the actors as well that got brought in for it, because I don't get to cast that often.
Sure.
Actually, it's mostly directing if I'm gonna do stuff like that, but. Everybody was really cool about it, and I was super nervous. I still get really nervous, especially if it's like, it's easy if it's like somebody I don't know that well, or I feel like is kind of like on the same trajectory as I've been with my career. Like you were super nice and easy to work with, even though I hadn't really known you. So I wasn't like nervous at all with you, but like if it's somebody
there's that.
Don't be nervous around me. I'm very awkward. So I'm trying my best not to be awkward at any given time. So there's no need to be nervous around me.
So am I, which is so fun. Like I think people, because I mask and cope with my nervousness by being, I mean, honestly, I am a genuinely excitable person, and like talking about stuff like this, it gets me so excited. But like there's times where I start like, I realize I'm in a situation and I'm like, before this can get weirder, I'm going to turn it and I'm going to take control because I feel so awkward. Like I'm going to dominate the energy of this so my awkwardness doesn't come to the forefront. But yeah, so I'm very similar. So it just comes out in different ways, I think, for people.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get any of that from you. So great. But it was like super easy to work with you, and like people I've known for a while, it's like super easy to like direct them. It's the people that I used to watch as a kid or a teenager, I guess, that are hard for me to work with. There are definitely people where I won't name any names because I'm embarrassed, but people who I just like, I see them on the schedule and I'm just like, oh God, how am I going to do this? Like I've been working for like 10 plus years less than them. Like, are they going to be weird? Like, is it going to be weird? Yeah. Are they going to like respect me? Should I just let them do whatever they do because they're great? And like, stuff like that. So I don't know quite the line because I try to avoid those situations if at all possible, but sometimes it's not under my control. So but yeah, so it's directing it's something that's cool. Like I'm glad I have that under my belt. It's a thing I can do, but it's not something I'm like looking to like pursue long time. Sure. Especially on a larger scale. I think anime is something I could probably handle. Video games, like short-term video games. But longer term projects and like really huge projects where you have to like really dive into the story and stuff like that, because of my memory retention, probably not the best idea for me. Because some of these JRPGs, like especially, massive. Like, I can't even remember a lot of the plot of games I actually enjoy. So just having to be at the head of that and like go through it with every actor, knowing each individual part of their story. Like, I'd rather just be the actor and just know like my part of the puzzle as opposed to like having to put the entire puzzle together. But directing is pretty fun. It can be fun, and a very interesting experience. So I don't regret getting into it.
Sure. I'm sure it probably informed a little bit of you as an actor to just be on that other side of the glass. I can't imagine you don't see something or pick something up along the way.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing I was talking about too, where like just sitting in on sessions was so informative, and like being able to direct and see even more people perform. It's I think helped me a lot for sure.
Yeah. I think this next thing I'm going to ask you, I have to because I think people would come at me with pitchforks if I didn't bring it up. But you're talking about, these ginormous video games that have, like colossal stories and just so much going on. I mean, in its own right, Genshin Impact is this monster that is just, it is like this successful beast that is just like ever growing and living. And I remember either reading or seeing something where your character was cast prior to the game coming out. So what has that process been like to like be a part of something at the inception and be like, okay, I don't know what this game is. I'm probably just a character in this game. And then to be like waiting silently on the sidelines as it's like growing into this ginormous monster and being like, oh, I'm going to be a part of this thing as it's getting so big. What was that whole journey like? Just like being able to be like a spectator and like, I'm actually in this too.
Yeah. Man, I had just randomly been brought in to audition for this thing like almost 3 years ago, I feel like at this point. I don't know exactly how long the game's been out, and we recorded like at least a year before then, maybe. I don't even remember at this point.
Yeah.
But I just got brought in to audition for this thing. I auditioned for one character. It was Ayaka, and wasn't expecting to get it. I had a cold that day. I sounded awful. I thought I sounded awful, but next thing I knew, I was cast maybe a few weeks later, and just started coming in for this character. And I was like, okay, cool. I still don't super know what this is. They had like trailers or like testing things out, and a lot of the testing stuff was involving my character because she was, I think, a beta testing character, I guess. So I got to see like all these things, like her move set, and I was like, okay, this looks neat. She's pretty. I like playing like pretty characters, characters that I enjoy the aesthetic of, and she's definitely one of those.
Yeah, very much.
So we were just recording it, and at a certain point, I just stopped hearing about it, and then the game came out, and I'm like, okay, cool. Don't know when my character is coming out. I have some incidentals that are in there because I recorded those like a year before. Yeah. So I get to hear them if I, watch people play the game or I play the game myself. And still waiting. I think a year went by-ish before I was actually able to announce her. But until then, like I had been seeing some auditions come by, characters that I saw get announced before she did. And I was like, when is she coming out? Like, I don't understand. And then they finally brought me back in, obviously before she got announced. And so backtracking a little bit. But they brought me in again, and they finally were like, oh yeah, she's in like the Inazuma region. So she's not coming out until, I forget, is it 2.0 or 3.0 or something like that. I think 3.0 is the current one, 2.0. Whatever patch that was. So, they finally were like prepping for her to come out. So we started doing like more story stuff. Cause I think initially we had done most of the like battle stuff.
Sure.
And the like, you can go through and like hear all the lines of like what they have to say about other characters and like other things in the game and whatever. So we did a lot of that. And during this, like, these newer sessions, we had actually gone back and re-recorded some of that stuff because it was so old at this point, and some of the stuff they had changed. So, and then, again, she finally came out, and I was just like, oh my God. Like, this felt like the longest wait I've ever had to do for anything. And people knew it was me because, you know, if you recognize my voice and you're good enough to recognize my voice, like, you know, you can tell instantly, I think, for certain characters. And so I just had people that were like trying to talk to me about it, and I'd be like, I can't say anything, so I wouldn't say anything. But yeah, my voice had been in videos since, the beta videos for the English version started going online. And then there was that whole thing about like, because most games are like super secretive about, you know, any information going out, but they had like, Genshin in particular has these like place cards where they have your name on them.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, like, you still couldn't talk about it. So it was like this weird like dance that I had to do with like, people were talking to me about it even more, but I still couldn't talk about it until I was officially given permission to. So when that finally happened, I was like such a breath of relief,
freed from the silence of
so hard to not talk about it.
Yeah, that's such a tough thing, I think, for actors sometimes. And it's the interesting thing about voice acting is like in live action or theater, it's like if you're in it and that's you, like there's no guessing like who's under that costume. They're not like keeping the actors a mystery, you know, but as a voice actor, and especially if your voice is recognizable and people are like, I know that's you as that character, it's a very hard position where you have to be like, I can't say anything, yes or no. Like, I can't say anything. And then people are like, well, why not? It's, you know, NDAs and these companies. It's a very interesting.
That's how it goes.
It's just how it goes, and it's a part of the process. But to be on the receiving end of people berating you to know is tough. It's got to be tough. But what a payoff.
And every company's different. You know?
Yes, that is. Everyone's got their own protocols. But was the game anything that you could have imagined at the time, and what has it been like being, you know, in the success of it now, in this reception, and being at fan conventions and seeing like how popularized this is becoming? It's really, it's hard for me to think of something similar in the way that it's culturally infected like a huge market. Like I remember going to a convention recently and like every banner and poster was Genshin Impact, and I'm like, the last I can remember was like Marvel doing that. It's like it's that level of like the zeitgeist. How has it been being in that vortex?
Was the convention Anime Impulse, by the way?
It might have been. Yeah, it might have been.
Okay.
Yeah,
because I knew you were there, and I was gonna go try to say hi. But I think you had left by the time I was not busy.
No. Oh gosh.
But yeah, there was a lot of Genshin stuff, and it really isn't for me specifically because I don't. I'm the kind of person on social media that doesn't want to be like, I'm very proud of all the work I've done and all the characters that I play, but I don't want to be attached to one thing. Yeah. So I don't like incessantly talk about any particular one thing. Like every once in a while I'll go back and like, if I see something relevant come up, or I just happen to, you know, have something remind me of something, I'll talk about it then. Yeah. For the day or whatever, but I don't want to talk about any one thing nonstop on my social media. So on social media, I see it every once in a while just because it's usually, I see it when people bring it to me. Sure. I don't necessarily put it out there unless I'm announcing something or something new comes out for Genshin. Like obviously the patches come out, so I'll talk about it every patch or something if it's something relevant to my character. Mm-hmm. But I see it definitely more at conventions, like you said, because for stuff like Anime Impulse is, I think, a special beast on its own, just because they have like such specific things that they promote. Yeah. So like a lot of it is Fire Emblem Three Houses. They've been doing a lot of, which I'm also in. So I'll go for like their Fire Emblem Three Houses day, and then they'll have like a sprinkling of like other people. And then this last one, they also had Genshin. So I'm there for like the Genshin days and whatever. And it's not until I get to see people in person to where I like fully realize like how big something is. Yeah. And it's kind of always been that way, honestly. But Genshin is like, I probably see more people with like coming up to me with Genshin merch than I don't want to see than anything, because there still is like the classic stuff like Kill la Kill and I still have a lot of Fire Emblem Three Houses people that come up to me.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, for it being one of the newer big things, it has already caught up to the popularity of like the other stuff that I see at conventions.
It's crazy.
For sure.
That's so crazy. And I also just want to quickly ask you about, I know you're in like a lot of these, I saw you're going to be in the new Octopath Traveler. You just did the new Star Ocean game. Like, are these the games that you, like, after doing it, were you excited about these games prior to even knowing you were in them, or is that the game that you would want to play anyway? I mean, the first Octopath Traveler for me was such a refreshing, like, I love that style of RPG. You know, it's everything that I want, and even like the Fire Emblem stuff. It's like I grew up playing Final Fantasy Tactics. It's like that's all my stuff. Are you somebody who is like a fan before you know about what you're casted in, or like when you're cast you're like, I gotta play this game now, I know how cool it is and all this stuff? What is like the interaction between you and current media and games that come out?
It really depends, because as you know, a lot of things are like heavily codenamed.
True.
And both of those games were very heavily codenamed. I actually ended up figuring out what Octopath was on my own, because they were not telling me what it was. And this was like way before it had been announced too, I think. Star Ocean, they told me when I had gone in for it, but I figured it out because as someone who is very immersed in gaming and a lot of these JRPG titles, because I played Star Ocean 3 particularly for that game, I sometimes, to figure out things, if they don't codename everything, like sometimes they'll just codename the title and like change the characters' names. But if they have like specific terms, like I think for Star Ocean they may have mentioned Pangalactic, and so I'll just take words that I'm like, this seems super specific, and I'll like Google it and I'll be like, oh, okay, I know what this is now. And that kind of like informs me a little bit more.
Sure.
So I think stuff like that is helpful. But yeah, I definitely am excited about things, whether I'd heard about them beforehand and got cast in them, or even if I don't get cast in them, like, yeah, definitely stuff that I still would have played. I didn't get through the first Octopath Traveler, but this one I think is definitely something I would probably like be able to keep up with more. Because Octopath, I think, was a really great idea, and it looks beautiful. The first game, I like just missed the character stories.
Sure.
Like they didn't connect. Like it kind of felt like they were supposed to. So I'm hoping, obviously I can't say anything about details of the game, but I'm hoping there's a lot more of that in this second one.
Yeah,
so.
That would be my critique and hope as well for the game, and what I'm kind of looking forward to.
That looks great.
Yeah,
I'm so excited for it.
Such a cool like game and style artwork. Anyway, I want to ask you a little fun thing. I think this way this is going to be released, if I'm correct in my scheduling for things, it's going to be like I know there's nothing formative to it here other than the fact the date that's coming out, like our holiday Christmas time, the way that's going to come out. So the idea that I would love to ask you is, as a voice actor, what would you consider to be like a great gift for somebody who is or is pursuing or is interested in like the world of VO, or maybe specifically for you or for anybody who's interested in this stuff? Like, what would you think is like a good gift to give someone or to get?
Man, I don't know, because I'm not like a huge techie or anything. A lot of the gear that I had gotten, that I'd been working on for the longest time, was my boyfriend Lucian's gear. So, and during the pandemic, I started just buying stuff because other people were buying it. So I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll try this. So I don't know. I guess like, I haven't read it myself, but I hear a lot of people really like Yuri and Tara's book.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal book.
Voice actor, I think is called. And is that what it's called?
Voiceover, voice actor, I believe, is it? And this the second edition. I believe they just came out with a new one in the, I don't know how many years, but a newer version came out. Yeah.
I probably will read it at some point, but I hear that's like just a huge fountain of knowledge, and they're both like super nice people, and just have such a body of work that I would absolutely trust everything they say. So I think that would be, if you're on a budget, maybe a very nice gift, because voiceover equipment gets pretty expensive. So.
Here's a Neumann TLM 103, $1,000 later.
So that, I would say that, or like maybe even a nice pair of headphones. Like I think headphones are pretty crucial.
Heck yeah.
Like having a good pair. So I just bought a new pair. I'd been using the Bear Dynamics.
Yep.
Which that's what you're hearing. Yeah. I swear by those, but I am someone who forgets my adapter a lot because I use them for like normal use too. I just bought these headphones that somebody recommended because they were on Black Friday sale, and I think they're also on sale for the holidays. But they're Audio. ODIO, I believe. And they have a cable, I think depending on what you buy, because you can buy a Bluetooth version, or you could buy a Bluetooth and a wired version, or just a wired version. And the wire has a cable that has the like normal, like everyday use plug-in, and then the 1/4 inch. And they're on both sides. So depending on how you're using it, if you're using it for every day, you just plug the 1/4 inch into the headset or the headphones. And then if you're using it for studio, you plug in the everyday use one, which I can't remember what inch it is.
1/4 inch and
whatever it's called. But you know, everybody knows what I'm talking about.
3.5 millimeters.
You plug that one in, and you can lock it so it doesn't like come out or anything. And then you use the 1/4 inch in like whatever preamp that you're using.
That's brilliant.
So I'm like, that's super smart. And I don't think they were more than $100.
Whoa.
And the quality is great, I think. Again, I'm not like a tech head or anything, but hey, I think they sound great.
Listen, if you're signing off on them, I think a lot of people here would trust your judgment. You know? And that's honestly a brilliant thing. Like that's actually kind of like a perfect gift idea. Someone who might want to use studio headphones and also might want to use them for like everyday iPod or whatever, other use. Like having that multifunction. I'm surprised that there's not more companies that are not making products like that. That's kind of brilliant.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. All right. I mean, listen, Erica, I've taken up so much of your time here. I apologize. We end all of our episodes asking this, and we've already talked about so many, but as is the nature of this show, we call it the points of experience by talking to people and the experiences they've had, and hopefully through talking about those, they incite other people to say, hey, I like that, or I like this, or I should do something similar. Is there an experience that you've had in your life, whether professional or in your personal life, that had an impact on you, or something you went through that taught something about yourself, or, getting an animal, or buying a certain pair of shoes, or any sort of experience that stands out amongst the millions and hundreds that you've probably had in your life that you're like, yeah, sharing this might have an impact on somebody's life?
I mean, if you are able to get a pet, I would say get a pet, because having cats now, as I had cats when I was younger, but having cats now in my adult life, my independent adult life, has been like absolute like godsend for me, because it's just easy to just curl up with an animal if your animal is that type of animal when you're just having a bad day or whatever. Or they just like, I feel like they really do have a sense of like when you're not feeling well, and they just come up to you and they're like, even if it's mainly for their own benefit of like being pet and whatever, they still know, I think. And they are like, well, I'm here if you want to pet me, and I know you do. So my cats, I have 2 cats. They're brother and sister. An orange tabby and a gray tabby, and they're just so cute. And I post pictures of them every so often, and I could not live without them. So if you have the ability and are not allergic, and there are pets, certain pets that you can get if you're allergic, I believe, I would say get a pet, any kind of pet. That brings you comfort. I
concur, specifically with cats. I mean, I have 4, and just
oh my god,
yeah, it's a crazy house. I also have a bunny here that I'm fostering, so animals are huge part of my life. And I have one cat who his name is Jorah from Game of Thrones, or Jorah Mormont, and he is the sweetest cat I've ever had. Like, he curls up on you. I wake up going, because he's sprawled across my neck. And he's also, at the same time, one of the most vicious cats, too. So, like, if you move the wrong way, like, while he's loving on you, or you look at him too long, he has, like, an insanity moment where he's like, what are you doing? Don't look at me! And he, like, bites you all over and scratches you. So, it's that combination of absolute love and affection, but it's like, it's on his terms. Like, don't get involved. It's a one-way love. But I still, again, like you said, you're sick or you're laying in bed and they just love on you. It's healing. So it's amazing.
It really is.
But Erica, thank you so much for doing this. It's been a pleasure to get to know you better. Like I've said, I've been a huge fan of your work. I think you are one of the most inspiring performers of this generation right now. Some of your work has been absolutely influential in my life. I mean, I have multiple pieces of apparel of Hunter x Hunter. It's like, that's one of my favorite shows of all time. So seriously, thank you. It means a lot to me for you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my, honestly, seriously. We have to round out. We got to have Erica and Matt Mercer, because we've had Christina already, and we'll have the quad of you guys on that show. But thank you so much for doing this, honestly.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great one, Erica. If we've ever had an episode where I've sat and reflected and I'm like, can you just let go, and can it be that easy? Can you just trust yourself and trust the process? It has been this episode where Erica just seems like, I know that she probably has all the same insecurities and cares and concerns about this profession, but it doesn't seem like it's life or death. And I feel like that's a very important part of the process, where I've often confused, and I think many people do, breaking into an industry or making a name for yourself can only be done by blood, sweat, and tears. And yes, that is very true for me. I've worked very hard, and a lot of people too, to pave a way for themselves. But it seems like trusting the process and trusting yourself and trusting your skill set and doing the task that's in front of you seems to be what has led her to a lot of her success. Again, I'm not here to ask her that, even though we kind of talked about it. But as I've reflected, I've just like, I want to take more of that on myself. It seems super healthy. It seems way more beneficial to allow yourself to get engrossed in the process of things rather than being like, I have to do this, like I was talking about, banging my head against the wall. Probably way more enjoyable too. And that's kind of the coolest part about this job, is recognizing what you're doing, and the fact that she still has that surreal reality that she's doing this is what I hope to hold on to, and I think a lot of other people can lose sight of, as you get wrapped up in the business of things and how much money am I making and how successful am I and have I been in this title or this title. And you can have those wants, but they should never be at the top of the priority list. And that's something I've really just kind of, doing this episode, I idolized. Yeah, idolized. Again, another performer who just really had a really big impact on me, and she does such great work. So again, another great episode. Thank y'all. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Leave the reviews on Apple and Spotify. That really means a lot. 5 stars, 4 stars, 3, whatever you think it's worth. Yeah. So much fun. Thank y'all for hanging around. You guys mean the world to me. That's another episode of the Points of Experience podcast, and we will see you all on the next one.